Hey, friend, it's great to be with you here on this Church Tips podcast, and I'm thrilled today that I get to hang out with my buddy Bobby Gourley from the great state of Alabama, although he tends to claim Tennessee, as I remember. So
born and raised.
And when I go into Chiefs country, what are you telling me? The Titans are going to rise again? Is that what you're telling me?
I doubt it, but we can say that if you want to.
It's all good. So, hey, we want to jump into a little bit of a different topic today here for this podcast. You know, if you've been in ministry for any time at all, and certainly in recent months and years, you'll watch things happen on the church landscape with pastors and churches that there's some seem to be taking dramatic shifts, some even to the point of ministers completely forsaking the gospel, going a completely different direction. And they're doing all that under the guise or a term of deconstruction. And Bobby and I have had some conversations about this, and I thought, it'd be good just to have Bobby come on and talk. It's not like he's the end all in this, but he's a pretty smart guy, and I want him to talk with us as pastors about the good side of deconstruction, the bad side of deconstruction, and where we really need to land in making sure in our own leadership we're doing right by the gospel and how we proclaim the gospel and move it forward. So, Bobby, boom! I'm just dropping a quarter in you to say, talk to us a little bit. Let's put everybody at a ground zero base that they don't understand what this is at all, and let's define it and then start talking through it.
Yeah, it's good. I think when you look at the word deconstruction, it means to tear down, to not build. And as pastors, we're called to build the church. And so the term deconstruction is already a negative. It's an enemy because it's talking about destroying what we're trying to build up. And so deconstruction is nothing more than people who are deconstructing the church or deconstructing their faith to remove everything they don't believe is of God from it. And what's interesting is every generation has their own form of deconstruction, where a younger generation sees what the previous generation has built, and they're like, "Hey, is this really biblical? Is this really God? Hey, you're saying this is the gospel, but it doesn't really sound like Jesus, look like Jesus, talk like Jesus, act like Jesus, smell like Jesus." And I was reminded years ago, I was in a difficult season of ministry. My wife and kids were at the beach, Panama City Beach, and I was sitting there, I think it was listening to a podcast, I was reading a book, and the kids were back at the condo, toys at the condo, and I'm watching the waves crash in. And I was in kind of a prayerful moment, and I just felt like God said, "Look, this is beautiful, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah, it's gorgeous, peaceful, the waves are crashing in, the beautiful water, the white sand." He said, "I look back," and I look back, and Panama City has this strip, and there's airbrush T-shirts and liquor stores and restaurants and miniature golf and go-karts, da-da-da. And he said, "Look back." He said, years ago, people started coming to this beach because of the simple beauty of the beach. But then man wanted to add other stuff to it to maximize it. He said, but people still come here for the simple beauty of the beach. They don't come for the airbrush T-shirts. They don't come for the go-karts. That's all added to. And he said, the same with my church. He said, the gospel in my church is beautiful in its simplicity. He's like, and we can add stuff to it continually, but people still want to come for the simplicity of the gospel and the church. And I think that's kind of the root of deconstruction is there's a whole generation of people that look at the church that we've built in the previous generation. And they're like, hey, there's a lot of airbrush T-shirts, a lot of go-karts, a lot of miniature golf. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't really seem like it's the church. And what they're doing is I don't think they're actually, there's some are, but I don't think they're tearing down the church as much as they're trying to take those layers off to get back to the simple beauty of Jesus, the gospel in his church. Yeah. And I think that's good. I think, we used to call that Reformation. And so I've told some of our young people that have asked questions about deconstruction. I said, I don't mind you, reforming the church. I don't mind us tearing down stuff that God didn't build. We still want to make sure we build back something better. And so, but there is a movement in deconstruction where it's just people trying to tear down the church. And I think in Psalms 1, David, if David's the author of it, says it beautifully. He says, first they stand with scoffers, and then they walk with the wicked, and they sit down with them. And I think there's a component of it where in our church relevance age that we begin standing with sinners, and then we start sitting with scoffers or walking with scoffers. And they're scoffing at the church, scoffing at Jesus, scoffing at the Bible, scoffing at everything we stand for. And then we end up sitting with them and become more like them than discipling them to become more like us. Right. And I think that's the liberal side that we see, where people are like, they remove, they disconnect truth from grace. And so the gospel is a gospel of love, but it's not a gospel of transformation. It's not a gospel of truth. It's not a gospel of the kingdom. It's just love. God is love. And so there is a side to that. And I think that's what scares pastors the most, is that feels like a threat to the church and to the gospel.
Right.
And I've seen pastors preach against it and fight against it. And I think the biggest key to deconstruction is just to listen. Like, if we listen, it's almost like these little Martin Luthers are running around and they're trying to tell us, hey, I've been digging in the word and I don't see any of this in the word. Why do we do this way? And I think most of us come from backgrounds of leadership. We push anybody who questions anything about our leadership or about what we do. We kind of push back against them. And I would say just embrace them like little Martin Luthers. And so we can see the church reformed and see some of those stuff stripped away. See the political, idolatry stripped away from the church. See the fact that, hey, we're building huge cathedrals, but we're not feeding the poor, and start seeing some of this pulled away so the church can be the pure and spotless bride that she's called to be.
So how would you address, so that's, if I can use the term, you and I in together viewing this similarly, how do we address our colleagues who really are on the more, what you and I would call, a more negative side? They're really going the wrong direction. And how do we help the younger ones under our charge be able to differentiate? It's one thing to be a little Martin Luther who's truly trying to make for a better church. It's totally something different to literally end up sitting with scoffers and tearing down the church. So how do we help a younger person really decipher that?
I think and this sounds like super simple, but I think it's two things. I think one is theology. I think we haven't been preaching good theology. We're preaching self-help stuff. And so when the self-help stuff doesn't help, people deconstruct the whole thing. And so I think a theology of what is the church? Is it this corporate expression that we see in the West, or is it a gathering of believers who live to advance the kingdom and to worship Jesus and to live like him in every form or fashion? A theology of the character of God. What is the character of God? Is he just love, or is he holy? What about the wrath of God, the judgment of God? Yeah. And I think, and I said this during COVID, I think one of the things we're seeing is we're being exposed for our lack of theology of suffering. That as soon as a believer starts to suffer, they start to deconstruct their faith, or believe God isn't real, or blame God. And so I think theology is one side. Theology of the word. Is the word true? Is it inerrant? Is it infallible? If so, why? And not just saying because the Bible says so, but really giving a deep, good theology. But then two, actually letting the church be a family on mission together, where that the people I go to church with are family, and we're here to actually take the Bible and actually do what it says. We want to feed the poor. We want to reach the lost. We want to help those who are broken. The social justice things. There was a big pushback from social justice years ago because we were scared of the liberality of it. But the church should be advancing the gospel in the areas where social justice is moving. So I think those two things together, deep theology, but also an unconditional love, when they come together, I think you see deconstruction kind of fade away. Yeah.
Wow. Good. This again is a different kind of podcast than we typically do on the Church Tips podcast. I really have appreciated you taking time to just open up some of this for us. For the pastor who's serious about trying to think this through, what would be a parting shot, if I can ask for that you'd say to them, if you don't remember anything else I've said, remember this? What would your thought be that you want to say to the pastors?
Yeah, God is always building his church and always purifying his church. And if we were all really honest, there's a lot of people in our church that aren't really the church. And deconstruction, I think, sometimes what separates the wheat from the tare. So don't panic. Don't try to fight it. Just build God's church. And even Jesus said, I'm going to let the wheat and the tare grow together. And at some point, I'm going to separate it. Yeah. And you don't have to do the separating. God will do the separating. And to be honest, there's a, you call it communist or Marxist movement. They're just deconstructing everything. They're deconstructing any authoritative structure, government, education, policing, and the church just happens to be in the crosshairs of that. So don't take it personal and just build the church and let God do the rest. Yeah,
absolutely. Wow. That's been so good, Bobby. I can't thank you enough. If anybody wanted to get a hold of you, they could contact the church. wearechapel.org. R is spelled out ARE, so WEARECHAPEL.org. It's the first time I've spelled out the entire website of a church. So you could get a hold of Bobby there at the church. Thank you very much, Bobby, for taking time to hang out with us today. I very appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, you bet. To all the viewers, I pray that you have a great day today. You take the thoughts we banged around today and make application of them in your own life, in your own church, and then your ministry grows and the church grows as a result of you being better as a pastor. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Make it a great one and be blessed.
Hey, Jonathan here, real quick before you go. Everything in your ministry rises and falls on your leadership. So investing in your leadership is essential to staying healthy and growing the ministry. And that's why I want to invite you to join us inside the Leaders.Church membership. This online streaming service for pastors gives you access to more than 300 videos plus training material to level up your leadership and improve your ministry skills. If you'd like to do that, I want to invite you to go to Leaders.Church/boost. Again, that's Leaders.Church/boost. Well, thanks again for joining us on the Church Tips Podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.